In part one of our interview with author and journalist Ben Dongle, we discussed the conflicts between left-wing governments in South America and the social movements that helped bring them to power in the first place. One of these governments is that of the Patriotic Alliance for Change in Paraguay, an alliance of 8 political parties whose leader, Fernando Lugo, won the presidency in 2008.
He's a former bishop, and he was elected on a platform to confront the country's soy, agro-industry, military, human rights violators from the dictatorship, and the right-wing infrastructure and institutions of the Colorado Party. The Colorado Party had been in power for 60 years and was a part of the Alfredo Stroessner dictatorship, which was one of many dictatorships around the region during the Cold War, and collaborated with each other to torture, kidnap, and murder political dissidents and maintain their power over the region. So when Lugo was elected, it was largely a victory against this nightmare of the dictatorship and the shadow the Colorado Party had over the country.
In a country of farmers, the Colorado Party had maintained one of the most unequal land distributions in the world. The BBC reported that when Lugo came to power in 2008, 2% of landowners controlled 70% of the land.
En mi primer mes de gobierno pondré en marcha la reforma agraria integral.
Many people were hopeful that he would transform the country and confront these institutions, but he hasn't shown the political will to do this. In Paraguay, one of the most powerful aspects of the economy is the soy industry. Soy in Paraguay largely goes to feed farm animals in Europe. And this industry is rapidly expanding. It's largely powered by Archer Daniels Midland, Cargill, Monsanto, and various Brazilian companies. Small farming communities, small farmers are having to migrate to the cities in a massive exodus from the countryside. They're doing this because of the repression they face from thugs hired by the soy owners, the terrible pesticides that are used in soy production that poison water sources, that kill livestock, that kill anything else but soy, and that create cancer, blindness, birth deformities among campesino farmers that are living side by side next to these seas of soy.
Que con el agrotóxico la gente no tiene más salud y no hay hospitales, no hay nada.
Las mujeres son las que sufren más la pobreza, las mujeres son las que no acceden a la salud, a la educación y cada día más a la pobreza extrema y a la discriminación.
As it stands, more than 25% of Paraguay's arable land is taken up by genetically modified soy farms. Peasant farmers, or campesinos, have organized to oppose this lucrative industry.
Dozens of campesinos have been murdered outright by paramilitaries hired by soy companies in collusion with the police and the military of Paraguay. And campesinos have fought against this heroically with direct action, blockading roads, occupying land, cutting down soy crops, defending their communities with machetes and solidarity with other communities. In spite of this, the expansion continues, the pollution continues, and Lugo has not only allowed for this expansion to continue, but he's repressed campesino sectors, like for example last spring, called a state of emergency in the Paraguayan countryside in the most socially powerful departments where there's the most organizing happening. And in this state of emergency, which hasn't been called since the Stroessner dictatorship, this outlawed any kind of political meeting of any kind and prevented for any of the kind of building blocks that make up the campesino movement from working.
This kind of repression isn't new in Paraguay. It was here in 1992 where lawyer and former political prisoner Martín Almada uncovered the famous terror files of the Stroessner dictatorship. The files revealed the extent of Operation Condor, the CIA's program of installing, supporting, and organizing a whole series of South American military dictatorships. The files documented the level of coordination amongst the dictatorships themselves that were responsible for the overthrow of numerous elected presidents and thousands of murders, tortures, and kidnappings. The U.S. government position is that it was necessary in order to stop the spread of communism. Others point to the benefits that accrued to U.S. corporations in the form of the land, low taxes, and low wages that were guaranteed by military rule. At the same time, the U.S. military was training many of the offending military leaders and a total of 60,000 Latin American soldiers at the School of the Americas. That program remains operational today in Fort Benning, Georgia, but the U.S. isn't the only foreign power that the region has to contend with.
The analysis of campesinos largely looks to Brazil as the imperialism in their neighborhoods and their communities. the Brazilian soy farmers coming into their country and working against the self-determination of Paraguayan farmers. So when speaking about imperialism, they're usually talking about Brazil, not just, instead of Washington. And this is a reality in Uruguay, in Bolivia, in Argentina, where the most powerful government in the world, in the region, the most powerful companies in the regions often come from Brazil.
Despite the relatively minor nature of his reform projects, President Lugo has been targeted for removal by the traditional elite and the Congress, which the opposition controls. He is currently facing demands for his resignation after he fired the commanders of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, amid fears of an impending military coup.
Since Lugo's time in office, there have been many different rumors of coup attempts against him. None of them have played out. Lugo is also, unfortunately, sick with cancer right now. So there have been these various serious challenges that have faced his administration, both from the right, his health situation, and from the protests from the campesino sector. And I think that all of these factors will contribute to the fact that he probably won't be re-elected and may not even finish his term.
With so many farmers feeling abandoned, Dongle says that many have organized alternatives to the government.
Families who are displaced by the pesticides, by the paramilitary violence, by the poverty of trying to work a small farm, arrive in cities penniless, without any kinds of allies often, and end up recycling cardboard from the streets to survive, and enter in oftentimes inescapable cycle of poverty and police criminalization, which is hard to escape. The Bañados, a poor neighborhood between the capital city and the river in Asunción, Paraguay, this has been expanding rapidly as more and more families leave the countryside. And one hopeful example in Paraguay of resistance to this poverty and exclusion is a certain neighborhood of the Bañados that is organized against the criminalization of their community, has worked to create their own health clinic, has worked as a kind of popular mayor's office to meet the needs of the community through years of organizing, and has, in spite of the negligence and repression of the Lugo administration, has worked to support small farmers there in the settlement, in the community, has worked to build trees to prevent flooding because it's right next to the river, and has essentially worked in the absence of the state and in the absence of a benevolent president, have worked to create a better society within this nightmarish scenario in Paraguay. And they've been successful, and there are many other examples around Paraguay and Latin America of people, when faced with these kind of challenges, working autonomously among neighbors, building close relationships over generations, and because of that, successfully building a better tomorrow and more opportunities for their kids and various generations.